Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Kristen Weardon Show. We are here doing a part 2 in our, series, we're going to call it. We're going to call it a 2-part series with Nathan Holmes. Our last part, we left off where Nathan was talking about the integration in the field of home technology. We left off talking about your home technology integration and all the things you did. It was Crestron, correct?
Correct.
And how I connected that to how your life is just so multifaceted. So what I want to do, because we didn't touch on this in the first episode, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's bring it on.
So relationships. And you've been married, are married now, you've struggled in relationships. Tell us how that worked. Tell us about your relationships and how your I don't want to say bipolar disorder, but how your diagnosis might have affected your early ones, where you are now. I just want to learn all about that part of you.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it absolutely, affected, my relationships. It still does to this day. There's definitely elements. It's still a part of me, and those kind of things. So my first wife, Kathy, met her in '95 when we lived in Minnesota. We were married for, once we moved to Florida, we got married down here. We were married for 7 years. Still to this day, one of my most dear people in my life. We still talk on, maybe not a regular basis, but fairly often and everything. She loves my current wife. She loves Kathy. So I mean, I'm blessed to have some very amazing people in my life, and Kathy is one of them. She was friends with my mother all the way up until my mom passed. They would do lunch and different things, and yeah, she had to live through a lot of the stuff. So when my father died, which was in the late '90s, I didn't realize how badly it affected me from the depressionary standpoint. And I still hadn't gotten to the point where I understood that my life went in this 3-year cycle. From '89 to '92, '92 got destroyed. '95, just moved to Florida. '98 was when I left Designer Audio, essentially starting my, it was just kind of 3-year thing. So I didn't realize that yet at the time. And so as the relationship was, falling apart and going apart, looking back, there were so many things about my being in a constant state of a depression, not being able to communicate well, making decisions that hurt our relationship was absolutely there. When, after that relationship, I had 2 other significant relationships before finding my current wife. And both of those were different challenges. When I met, the next girl I dated, she was a single mother, and never even occurred to me that it was something to be concerned about or whatever. But she moved in with me and had kind of ended up, my career has gone to multiple places, and it taught me, how much that anything involving the kids, her kid and later on the other ones involved, they come first. And you have to temper how you respond to things, and it teaches you how to you have to love unconditionally, because especially when you're coming in as a parent who's not the biological parent, there's a whole different set of guidelines on when it comes to disciplining or providing guidance or providing those things. So it's much more of about how can I be an adult, how can I be a parent, but still build a relationship with this child so that there's a respect, but yet also a bond. So it was interesting.
And then you have to take that, probably learning by this point in your life, this, I don't want to say arrogance, but this, I'm the greatest guy in the world, with this smartness that you had or have, and kind of bring that like, I'm not first all the time.
Absolutely. And you definitely do that. And after that relationship had ended, the next girl I dated actually had 5 kids, 4 of which were still living at home. And again, one of those things, your brain isn't necessarily right. It was no big deal. They just, within 30 days, they were living with me.
Wow.
And I don't think there was enough time to really process, how that changed life a little bit, because in the bio, within a few weeks after them moving in, that got me kicked out of the place. And while moving into the new location is when the boulder fell off the mountain, crushed my truck, broke my neck, all those things. So now I've got, a couple months of recovery time, and then coming out of recovery, I'm focused on, how do I get work, all those different things. So while the relationship and the kids were there, my brain was really more focused off of things than that. So it never really, it wasn't really that bothered me, or wasn't like it felt like it was a different burden or different things. It was just, okay, this is life. This is where we're at. Let's do this.
That's interesting that when you talk about it in both instances, that you're just saying, okay, very almost like welcoming, and okay, this is just a new facet of how life is. It's just an is.
It's kind of how I felt it was. It's like if you're going to, my mind at this point, you're getting into your 30s. If you start dating someone, they're going to have kids. Okay. Do you want to make a big deal out of this, or do you want to accept that this is just the way life is? Okay. So the big thing you have to, I guess, in my mind, understand was your actions with children and in a relationship that has children. There's certain things you have to remember that those are going to last the lifetime of the child. So you have to, at least for me, it was about ensuring that no matter what happened with the relationship with the mother, whether, those things, you don't fight in front of kids, you don't do those things, and even when the relationships failed, it was, how do I maintain relationships with the children,
Right.
Which I've been able to do better with some, with others, but the idea is that that's a different relationship than the one with the parent.
It would be very refreshing if people nowadays, when they decide to date somebody with children, looked at it from that aspect. Because I can tell you in the coaching that I do, sometimes I will run into people that broke up because of the kids. And I'm like, well, didn't they see the kids when they walked in the door? When you have them every other week, did they not notice that these children are kind of part of your life? They came out of you or whatever,
You know what's interesting is I've seen that happen in a couple of relationships, but one of the things that I've seen is single parents have a relationship with their children. And somebody coming into this relationship with that single parent, that's one facet. But let's say me, if how I was going to respond to their kids, if we're at completely opposing odds of how to raise children, discipline, provide guidance, those things, it puts a massive strain on the relationship. And one of two things has to happen. Either I have to change, actually one of three, I have to change and adopt their mentality. Two, they have to change and adopt mine. Or three, we have to go our separate ways. And unfortunately, it gets described as it's because of the kids. But no, it's you. Somebody once told me, their psychologist, I was writing a book on relationships, and she gave me this phrase, which was, you have the greatest ability to bleach red flags white. It's this amazing phrase. And she did that. That's what she did. And we do that in relationships. So I've got this great relationship with this person, and then we see the red flags on how they interact with the kids, and we don't do anything about it. But this is where the resentment builds and all these difficulties. So you get these barriers that were always there. But because of either a need for the relationship or a hope that things will change, we dive in, and it ultimately ends up failing because the signs were always there.
I agree with that. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, well, what were you doing there in the first place? With a lot of, when I see people that come in post-relationship with relationship difficulties, and right now in my world, we're doing a whole month of starting from scratch with relationships and working through it, because I saw so many people not seeing the red flag. And the first paragraph out of their mouth when they're telling me what the problem is, I just sit there and I go, okay, inside. But I also have to remember we were all there at some point. I've just learned and also been trained. Right. You've definitely learned because you've been through so many of these situations, or a few at least, that you learned from, that I think we also have to walk through them in order so the next time we go, oh yeah, I saw that. This looks like something I've seen before.
100%. And I think, I've always said, I think men are the most insecure things on the planet. And so as a man, there's many relationships or many things that I've gone into where you're afraid to lose what could be there over what you're seeing. So you ignore some of these warning signs. You don't look at it because for a moment you feel good, and that a lot of it stems from lack of confidence, insecurities, different things. That once you get to that point, now you can actually enter a relationship because you're now being you, because you're willing to walk away if it's not right. But if you're insecure, you're not.
We've had this conversation about being the authentic you when you were at your birthday. Yeah, we had that conversation, and it's so powerful when you realize who you are, and then you can own it. Yeah, whether it's past that you have to own or deal with, or anything that you have to engage and embrace, and just say, yeah, that was my life. This is me now. Take it or leave it. love if you could take it. If not, let's move on. And I wish you well.
Yeah, it's that phrase of I don't live with regrets, because to me a regret means I would go back and change it. I can't change anything. Have I done things I'm not proud of? Absolutely. But those were mistakes I've made that I won't make again. And I'm very proud of who I am today. So does it mean I'm not going to make mistakes? Nope. I'm definitely going to make mistakes. Try to make different ones this time. But it's definitely a live a life of no regrets, because I wouldn't change who I am today.
I think we all evolve into just being so comfortable in our skins at some point.
Hopefully.
That we just go, okay, but next,
Yep.
So going back to when you were in Florida, there was an accident that really impacted your life.
So after I left Crestron, I was running a company down in Naples, and my girlfriend at the time, as we were driving down, it was 11 o'clock at night, and we were going over an overpass, and all of a sudden a gentleman ran out in front of the car. We stopped to try to avoid him and not hit the wall, and essentially, he hit the car when we went up over him, and when we went back to see how badly he was hurt, he passed away right there. And he had run under the overpass and was cutting back across the highway to get away from the police who had been chasing him. And so immediately police were there and all those different things. So it was a very traumatic experience, definitely.
And you weren't at fault, but it still affected you like...
Oh, absolutely. It sent me, again, I didn't realize at the time I was in the depression still from my father's death and those different kind of things, but this sent me into a much, much, deeper depression as well, because you have all the questions, you have all the things, the why me's, what was his life like, and you do all these things, and you feel, that doesn't matter if they say no, you weren't at fault, you still were the person behind the wheel, and so you definitely, you feel a lot of depression and guilt and those things about it.
You did a really good job of hiding it.
Well, on the surface, yes, but if you look, everything was collapsing behind the scenes.
Yeah, on the surface, it was like I knew you then. I heard about the accident, but when I saw you, it was like, oh, everything seemed fine.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how we can mask, and especially I think if you have a brain that works differently, I think the coping skills help us mask even more until we realize we're masking.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And so when did you realize how much effect that had on you? Was it after the boulder fell on you in Colorado?
Oh, yeah. It wasn't until...
Hold on, we gotta back up and tell that story real quick.
So, yes.
We're laughing, but you almost died.
I did. Here, you get the scar on the forehead there. So, it was after the boulder event, which the boulder event was, yes, as we got kicked out of our place. We were moving to a new place from Gypsum to Glenwood Springs. 6 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, we were driving, coming out of Hanging Lake Tunnel on I-70, and boulders fell off the mountain, crushed the truck, broke my neck, 300 stitches in the head. Just one of those weird events that you just, it's February 11th. The water heats up on the red rocks, gets in the cracks, and then it freezes and cracks the rocks, and they fall. The interesting thing, this is one for you, the 10-year anniversary of that event never happened for me. So just by coincidence, I boarded a plane to, I think it was Fiji, on February 10th, 2017, landed February 12th. So for me, February 11th, 2017, the 10-year anniversary of that never occurred for me, just by happenstance.
That is incredible.
Yeah, just kind of a weird
Because that's when you cross the timeline, you miss a whole day.
Yeah.
You take off one day and you land another.
Yep.
That is wow. But that just meant that it's no longer on your radar in my world. Like it doesn't have the effect it used to have on you.
Yeah, because it was scary. Because I still had to be running between the offices in Colorado, and so after I got the neck brace off and after I was back to work and everything, there were times where you'd be driving through a canyon and you just like inadvertently get that feeling that these rocks are hovering over you, and when you see those signs, watch for falling rocks. That's because they can fall.
So how do you feel that those two events, like when did you realize that had such an effect on you from the first event? Now that you have the second event,
that still wasn't
both life-changing.
That still wasn't there, because there were so many things in life that prevented me from focusing on that. So it was probably 7 months after that is when I left that company and went to Las Vegas to start the new company. And then the recession hit, and that company had to close. And then I moved to Los Angeles and was working for a new company, and bringing my relationship and everything with me. So all those things were happening now once I was in Los Angeles, and that relationship was falling apart. It was literally that period of time where I was so depressed, I became suicidal. I was literally in the garage with the car running when it finally, I came to peace with everything, and I could see clearly, all these different things, and realized, from the death of my father to, killing that person to, doing all these different things. And it was really that at that moment where I was actually able to kind of let go of all those things and not carry it. And that was really where my path to emotional recovery began.
Wow. So the almost deciding you basically wanted to still be here.
Yeah. Because at that point I was so lost. Everything I felt like I touched, I'd destroyed. Businesses destroyed. I'd had this happen. Relationships were failing. Another relationship was failing. All these different things. It just felt I'd never, wasn't good enough. All these different things. I had all these thoughts, and then luckily came out of it. The one thing I think it was is I couldn't do that to my parents. Is really one of the
they
things.
Were still alive at
my
this
mom,
point.
my mom was alive.
Okay.
My dad had already
Oh,
passed.
that's right. Yeah.
It was I couldn't do that to her, and I think that was probably one of the most saving thoughts during that time.
Right. I've heard other people I've had these conversations with that might be their children, or there's something that says, okay, I'm just going to give it another day. I'm going to give it another try.
Yeah.
So did you find yourself going for help during this time? Did you do a lot of introspective self-work?
A lot of self-work. I probably should have gone to get help. I started writing a book on relationships during that time, which it's much easier to write a book on relationships when they're all failing than it is when things are going good. It's hard to focus back on it.
You told me that recently. I said, whatever happened to the book? And you're like, my relationships are great now.
Yes. Yeah. It's
so
much more difficult.
I don't have a book to write.
It's so true.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a lot of introspection, and then thinking about things and going, okay, it's okay to fail, but it's not okay to not try. So that's when I started trying to understand how to deal with life through my mood swings, accepting I have it. It's not denying it anymore or just saying it's something I can't. No, I own my actions. So if I'm owning my actions, I can respond differently. And so it was learning how to say, here's how I would respond to something if I was baseline. Okay, this would indicate I'm in a manic phase. This would indicate I'm in a depressed phase. Knowing how I respond to things, I can tell where I'm at, and therefore then hopefully change how I respond. If I know I'm going into a manic phase, don't let myself stay up till 2, 3 in the morning every night. Force myself to go to bed. If you know you're in a depressed phase, force yourself to get out of bed. Do these different things. So it's just kind of a lot of how would I respond if I wasn't,
Right.
baseline, and then using that.
You've created your self-awareness to such a point that you have implemented your own coping mechanisms to combat the two highs and the two lows.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
I think, again, people who, I want to say, I always go back to brains don't work differently, but I'm starting to wonder where the brains are that don't work differently.
We're all unique. There's so many different things. We're all just, I think we all, they always talk, women have a monthly cycle. Men have a cycle too. The reality, we all have these different cycles. For some of us, it's just more severe than others.
Yeah.
And our ability to work through that, I think, is also individual. So I don't think there's one answer.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm coming to learn that I think sometimes, I think it's good to have a diagnosis that helps you find coping skills or mechanisms that might work for you. Or anyone, whatever it might be. But I also think when we're self-aware, that we can be when we're self-aware and we're honest with ourselves, then we can say, oh, you know what? I've been up late the last couple nights. When I stay up too late, this is what my day is going to be like tomorrow. So let's just not do that.
Yeah, you're right, and I think it's why I don't have a problem with a lot of medications. If people are, having, severe, use it as a tool. It's there. If that's the tool you want to use to just be successful in life, fine. That's fine. There's no judgment to that. If you don't want to take that, but you still have to acknowledge who you are, and if you're not going to want to be on medications, then you still have to find another mechanism to be able to sustain life. Otherwise, you will end up going off the rails and going in negative ways.
And just repeating the same patterns that didn't work for you before.
Exactly.
Yeah. So here we are. We're closer to the present life that you have and created. So you met Nicole, who you're
Mm-hmm.
currently married to. How long have you guys been married?
We've been married 11 years now.
Wow, has it been that long?
Yeah.
I have to tell you, probably there's a couple events I regret missing in my life. And I always tell you this when I see you, I regret missing your wedding.
It was a lot of fun.
Because I saw the pictures and I'm like, oh, I should have gone. I forget, there was something, maybe it was with my kids or whatever. I should have tried to make it work because one, I love you both. You both are just an amazing couple to me. I adore both of you.
And we love you too.
But thank you. But so you met Nicole. Now, how do you when you met, had you quite gotten here yet, or was she part of that journey of you?
Oh, she was absolutely part of the journey. I mean, I had been, single for months at that point, and was starting, but I was also in this mindset now of, I'm okay with me. I am never going to be in a relationship again. I'm fine with being single. I don't need a relationship, different things. So I entered into the relationship with, all right, if we're going to go on a date, great. It'll be over in a day anyways, because there'll be something that happens. I'm not willing to put up with anything that isn't in alignment. And I'm not, and that was my thought. So we went on a date. Wow, that was amazing. It was better than I could ever have expected. It was wow, okay. All right, she'll screw it up. And then, we went on another date and it was like, wait a minute, that was amazing. It was like every single time where I thought it was just going to be, she responded to life, the situations around in ways I had never seen or never considered. And, eventually I even told her, all right, finally I give up, I'm yours. She goes, what do you mean? Are you testing me? I'm like, yep, absolutely was.
She wasn't part of the previous conversation in your head.
Exactly, 100%. But it was I was not willing to play a game for anybody. This is me, and I'm going to be me. And I knew in my heart that being me was going to end it quickly. And the reality is it didn't. And so from that point on, we've literally been together really since that first date. But it was just, it was amazing.
Yeah. I love your story. I do. So Nicole was recently sick.
Yeah, this was a scary one.
This is an incredible story because when I read this on Facebook, because you guys were coming back from a trip, and I was like, holy cow, was my first reaction.
It was crazy.
So explain to us what happened there.
We were out in California visiting our daughter, for Christmas. And on the way back, we stopped in Vegas. A friend of ours was performing, so we went and watched her perform. We left. We're flying back to Nashville. We hit Atlanta. Everything's fine. We leave Atlanta, land in Nashville, and she's in the middle of a stroke. We realized it not because there's anything happening. It's like all right, time to get up, go to get up. And she's never one to wake up well. She's always cranky when she wakes up. So I'm not really expecting conversation. So I get her luggage out and everything, and it's our turn to go. I'm like, okay, time to go. And she goes to get up and then sits back down. Goes to get up again and sits back down. I'm like, are you okay? Yeah, and then she gets up and she moves, and I notice she's dragging her right leg. And I go, wait, stop. And, tell me what's wrong. And she can't communicate. She can't talk. And one of the flight attendants is like, is she having a stroke? I'm like, yes, I think she is. And so immediately called EMS, all those different things. And she had a blockage in her carotid artery,
Wow.
which had prevented, all the blood flow to the brain for a period of time. And luckily there's a 4-hour window where they can apply Technoplase, I think it's new. Either way. That drug breaks up the clot and everything, and it was a miracle to see. I mean, she couldn't speak, couldn't communicate, didn't, any of those kind of things. And then within 5 to 10 minutes of giving that drug, there was a finger twitch, and then there was a toe twitch, because the whole right side of her body was not moving. And so then over, the next few days, there was, decided improvement. But that was scary as hell. That was definitely the in a moment, your life changes. And for me, like you said, I have this ability just to accept this is where things are and go forward. So from this point, I was like, okay, life is different. I'll be changing my wife. She's in a wheelchair, all these different things. This is okay. Life is just different now. It was where my mind went immediately. To her credit, that woman is a freaking rock star who she's out visiting friends in California right now because she just flew out there and went and saw some old friends. She is, for all intents and purposes, 100% recovery. There are definitely some, things that are slightly different from where they were, but can she, navigate life and do those things? And she's
incredible.
amazing.
And the fact that you had that layover, meaning you had that just a short flight from Atlanta to Nashville, rather than the entire flight from California, which would have been 6 hours if it was direct, 5 or 6 hours,
It's
I
like
think.
5, yeah, yeah.
That you were able to not only be home
Mm-hmm.
as it was happening, but then able to recognize it and deal with it right away.
Yeah, because by the time you get off the plane, everything to the hospital, it had already been, 2.5, 3 hours, at that point, because there's, all the delay times,
Yeah.
those things. So yeah, it was scary, definitely, remarkable. And she doesn't remember any of it. She doesn't,
Wow.
which is, I will tell you, the hardest thing in that was, first of all, she couldn't understand words because the speech center in your brain, there's some things. So, be like, hey, do you know who that is? And they'd point to me. She go, and this is when she could start to speak. Do you know who that is? Yes. Who is that? Husband. What's his name? Husband.
Okay.
And then I said, hey, your daughter Olivia, just called to, send her love. Who? Your daughter. Who? Olivia. And we both just, broke down at that point and everything, just because, sorry, get emotional still. She couldn't process it at that time. And it was, gratefully, she doesn't remember any of that.
Right.
But that was very difficult.
Well, when you find your soulmate, and you've been through all these relationships and moments and people and then you find the person that I really believe, and I wanted to touch on this. You said I was, being my authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've had this conversation. When you're your authentic self, you find authentic people.
Yeah.
So you found your soulmate, your authentic person who accepted you for who you are. And you're like, holy cow. somebody
You like me? This is amazing. Yeah.
Right. And then you like back and you get along and you gel. When something happens to them, I think it hits your soul, it hits who you are, and you get worried and tearful and afraid. But the way you handled it on social media was so positive. You're like, okay, you didn't come in like with the sob story. You came with, this is where we are, and this is what we're hoping happens next.
I'm a big believer in we create our own realities. I believe that if we surround ourselves with negativity, the only possible outcomes we think of are negative, and guess what? That's going to come to reality. Mm-hmm. So if all you focus on is the positiveness, but the positive recovery, anything that way, I think that that's such a benefit in life to where it is. I've lived things that don't make sense and that you can't plan for, but yet they happen. So the same type of thing with this is, I didn't let her know the stats on how often people recover this, or the doctors would give me all that, but for my thing with her, it's like, you got this, you've got this. I never let her believe there was anything other than, you have this, you'll get this. Doesn't matter what the the statistics are and how these things. And so I think there is a bit of that, is if you only allow yourself a positive outcome, most of the time that's what's going to be there.
I agree with that. And I think there's a growing world out there that is starting to believe that, hey, we have two choices here. We can focus on what doesn't work all the time or what hasn't worked in the past, or we can focus on what we can create now and move forward into a more positive way of living and a more positive life.
Sure.
I think that's one of the reasons things like meditation and yoga and mindset is so important, because it all goes to mindset. Mm-hmm. And in the mindset, I want to segue.
Love it. Right in there.
Right in there. So you have a lot of things that you've done over the years that have led you to where you are in the technology world, mm-hmm. in the AV, I guess, what would we call that?
Well, AV called the home technology, segment, residential technology sector.
So your current role, mm-hmm. and you're working where now?
So I'm working for a company out of Miami called WhyReboot, and we build pre-configured network solutions for homes. So as everything in the home has begun using the network, from Wi-Fi to the things that plug in for network, your computers, all those things, homes put a lot more strain on the network than most any business. Businesses have about 3 or 4 device types. What do you have? Laptops, smartphones, printers, and servers. That's about it. So and those were designed from the ground up to work on networks and work together. Yeah. Your home, you can have 30, 40, 50, 100 different devices and different types of devices that are all trying to share the network, that were never tested to work with each other and never designed to work with each other. So when you're trying to achieve a stable environment for those, it requires some of the highest grade, products from networking, so enterprise grade products and those things, and that requires a level of expertise to be able to put it in. Because if you can put in enterprise grade hardware, but you can only configure it from a consumer level, guess what? That's not an enterprise grade solution. So our company has a number of engineers on staff. The integrators around the country that we talked about that put this technology into people's homes will say, here's my project. This is the floor plans so you can design the Wi-Fi, and we'll produce predictive heat maps that show exactly how the Wi-Fi is going to be. And then they'll say, here's what's going to run on the network. We'll say, okay, based on those devices, these are the network products that will support that to make sure your client has a perfect experience. Okay. And then when they go order it, they just tell us how we want it configured. We ship it to them, and then we've got a team of engineers that will then provide support for that for as long as they want them to, 24/7, 365. So I've been doing that for a number of years, and I was, either owned or ran integration companies for 20 years. And so as director of operations, what I'm doing is really helping the company stabilize each of the different roles to be able to put all the processes in place to allow us to grow effectively, because we have a tenet that we're really a support company, that the cost of entry is buying a product. So we offer support 365, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we make sure that it's zero hold time. So for us to grow the company and continue to provide that, we want to make sure to put the efficiencies in to be able to ensure that we can increase our staff as the company grows and still be able to provide that level of support.
So many things are going through my mind as you're talking, because one, it's really needed in the home place, because I know when I built my house, it was a lot of parts and pieces, and then there was always this, it's not made for residential. I kept hearing that a lot, and I know it was back then, but I think that went on for a very long time. And these larger homes, and people want this product, they want that product, but then you had to get them all work together.
Yes.
And they didn't always work together well.
It's the difference between an integrator and a facilitator. You're good integrators. A lot of these homes that we have nowadays, I've done 100,000 square foot houses. These are commercial structures that people live in. So the products to support that are very different. And part of being a good integration firm is understanding which products are best, for each customer. And for us, it's when it comes to the network, it's how do we ensure that, your iPhone, you can walk seamlessly through your house or your property or wherever and never drop a Wi-Fi call.
Oh my gosh, that would be great.
I did 6 acres of coverage in the Hamptons. You could walk in and out of every building, down to the beach, in and out, and you would never drop a Wi-Fi call.
That's incredible.
It's just physics. It's all
Says
physics.
the smart guy. Says the super smart guy in the room. So you've overcome adversity in personal adversity. You've created, and now business-wise, you're helping this company become even bigger and better than where it was. It's brought you back to Florida, at least part of the time.
Yep.
So you've kind of come sort of full circle through through personal adversities. How do you feel like your past businesses and business situations, people you've worked for, whatever, have put you into this role, and how it will help enhance this role where you're at now?
It's a really great question. I think the two aspects are I've owned my mistakes that I've made through the years in the different businesses and tried to learn from them and be better. And so every time I'm looking to grow and accelerate. A big portion of what I've done in the industry over the last 20 years is create education for the industry, for people. I have a knack of being able to take, technobabble and convert it into layman's speak so people can understand it. So I've leveraged that, but I also focus heavily on making sure that I have personal development goals. My team has goals, different things, so that I continue to grow within there. So I've had these wonderful jobs that have allowed me to evolve in an understanding of different aspects of the business. And then for me, it's how do I do, when I was younger, it was what certifications can I get to be better at that? Last year I took a credential readiness program at, Harvard Business to be able to say, I'm at this level of business now, what can I do? But it was business analytics, financial accounting, and economics for managers. And it gave so much additional insights into, where we can take things. So I'm not done. This is just where it's at, and it's going to continue to grow and evolve. My hope is I can stay at this company and do it all here, for the remainder of my time, but I'm still going to grow and change and evolve in that. And I think that's, for me, it's a lifetime pursuit of being better tomorrow than you were today. And how do I help the industry and the people in it do the same thing.
Well, you've been a teacher for a long time
Yes.
at CEDIA,
Mhm.
right? I like it as when you say the layman thing. And I think anytime you're talking about something, whether it's your diagnosis or your life travels and trials or business, you talk about it in a way that anyone can understand. You don't try to talk above people when you talk about it, even though you have the big knowledge base. I always say sometimes you have to describe things to me with the salt shaker, the pepper shaker, the phone over here, and this is the way things move around, because I'm a visual person, sometimes or most of the time, and so I have to see it to understand it. You seem to be able to paint the picture, and I think that, I don't know, for me, I would think that really helps with your management style.
I hope it does. I think even with my management style, there's people who may see this, who've seen me over the years. You make mistakes, and I think one of the things I try to do is own those mistakes and then be better with that as well. I think if I create an environment where you're promoted to learn and be better tomorrow than today, that also indicates that you're going to make mistakes, and it's okay. And a big portion of, as I've trained people and brought them up in the industry or mentored people, a lot of times I'll try to let people. It's kind of like the lanes in the bowling alley when you put up the bumper so the ball can't go in there. Same type of thing, is I know they're going to make mistakes. If I just tell them they're going to make a mistake, they're not really going to learn. They might just change their behavior, but they didn't learn. So it's allowing people to fail in a controlled manner that they gain the education without the detriment to the project or the business or those things. So I try to implement that in there from a management perspective to help them grow in the ways that I've been able to learn and grow, I guess. And so, yeah, that's part of what I do.
If you had to leave the audience with a final message that you wanted to share with people, because you have such a fascinating story that has so many twists and turns and ups and downs and facets to it, what would you want people to know or share with them that they could take away from this or your knowledge base?
That's a good question. I think everything is possible. I think we have to try and try to do what we want in life, and you may not always get there on the first try. My path has led many different directions to get to where I'm at, but I'm where I'm meant to be. And if I would have given up at any points of time along that, I would have never had the wonderful life and experiences that I've had along there. And it's kind of figuring out what you want. If what you want is, I want a white picket fence in the same town I grew up in, I want my kids, I just want peace and tranquility or whatever, go get it. If you want to travel the world and create an environment where you can do that, go get it. I'm where I want to be, and I did that through trial and error and in a path that made sense to me in my life, even with the different things that happen. So I think you're going to trip, you're going to fall, get up, wipe your knees off, understand that, did you trip or did something else trip you? And the parts that are what you do on your own, that's the only thing you can change. You can't change others, you can only change your own actions. So understand your point in your successes, understand your part in your failures, and be grateful for knowledge of both, and then take the next step forward. The longest and the shortest journeys both start with a single step.
Yeah, that's a great message, because you're right. We can only control what we do, and we can only change or fix what we have of our own. So thank you so much for joining us today, Nathan. And maybe there'll be a part 3. I don't know where Nathan's going to go next, but we shall see. Thank you so much, Nathan, for joining us. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today on the Kristen Weardon Show for our part 2 with Nathan. Next week, we'll have a new guest, and I wish you all a great day. You can find out everything you need to know about our podcast in the description, anything about Nathan, my bio, or Nathan's bio, and you can watch the podcast on your favorite platform, including iHeartRadio. Have a great day, everyone.